Amazing moment, struggling mom's card declined for Diapers CEO steps up to transform her life. In a quiet suburban grocery store, Sarah stood at the checkout counter, anxiety creeping in with each passing second. The cart was packed with essentials: milk, bread, and those all-important diapers for her youngest, Max. As the cashier rang up her items, she felt the pressure of eyes behind her. Each beep reminded her that every dollar counted, and she had just enough on her card, or so she thought. When the machine beeped ominously and the cashier's face contorted with concern, panic flickered in her chest. Card declined. Heat flooded her cheeks, and she could almost hear the whispers from the line of shoppers, looking at the struggling single mom, judging. She wanted to retreat, to melt into the linoleum floor, but Ella's small hands clutched her leg, and Max's innocent gaze bore into her, confused. As she mumbled apologies, she could feel the sting of humiliation suffocating her breaths. Losing that small battle felt monumental. Her heart sank as she turned to leave, empty-handed. Behind her stood Nathan, a successful CEO whose company was making waves in the tech world. He was merely in line to buy his usual snacks when he caught sight of Sarah's plight. Watching the worried mother walk away, the weight of her struggle hit him like a freight train. Nathan recalled the days when his own mother had faced similar hardships, the way she pulled from her meager resources to make things work. He felt compelled to help, an instinctive urge that he couldn't shake. But how? Nathan spent the rest of the day ruminating on that fleeting encounter, searching for Sarah's name, an almost obsessive need to find her. He discovered her tenacity, how she juggled her roles as a waitress and cashier, consumed by the necessity to provide a stable life for her children. Inspired, he envisioned a program that supported single parents, easing their burdens with flexible jobs and professional development. It's not just about corporate responsibility, he mused. It's about giving them a chance. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Found at a local diner where she worked tirelessly, Nathan approached Sarah, who was washing dishes, lost in her thoughts. His invitation to join his company came as a shock, a lifeline tossed into turbulent waters. As overwhelming gratitude filled her heart, doubts lurked beneath the surface. Could she really pivot to a corporate world so foreign to her? What if they expected too much? Each decision loomed larger than the last. Past responsibilities still pulled at her, that nagging fear of losing herself amid the new demands. Just when she began to find her footing, stress soared like a rocket. Max fell ill, and Ella's school struggled with funding for activities. Sarah wrestled with long hours, grappling with deadlines and the relentless tension in her chest. Each day felt like a balancing act of exhaustion and hope, an internal war between pride and desperation. Could she truly rewrite her story? As her mind raced through sleepless nights, she confronted the reality that the stakes were higher than ever. Could her children's future be defined not by struggle, but by strength? Yet, with every glance at her aging bills and sick child, Sarah felt an all-consuming dread. Was it already too late to seize control of her narrative? The questions loomed like clouds above her, dark and heavy, as she pushed onward, a fierce resolve mixing with a paralyzing fear that perhaps she was still just the struggling single mom. The next morning, Sarah found herself in the bustling office of Nathan's company, a far cry from the greasy diner where she had spent countless hours scrubbing dishes. The air hummed with unspoken expectations and the bright lights flickered in rhythm with her racing heart. She reminded herself to breathe. This was a chance, a pivotal moment, yet the enormity of it paralyzed her. Walking through the aisles of cubicles felt like stepping into a different universe. People darted by, their faces absorbed in bright screens or intense conversations. Her realm of experience seemed miles away. As she sat at her lackluster desk, a small handwritten note from Nathan lay beside the computer. You have what it takes. Just be yourself. The words resonated in her mind, yet the skepticism naturally crept in. Could she truly adapt? Would they see her struggle and dismiss her as unqualified? The first few days blurred into a cacophony of meetings, training sessions, and half-formed thoughts. Nathan encouraged her to use her voice, to share her insights, yet she found herself shrinking. Each time she prepared to contribute to discussions, her stomach twisted. Who was she to challenge the polished professionals around her? As the clock ticked onward, Sarah felt the pressure to prove her worth. Layers of doubt intermingled with the necessity to succeed. She studied her colleagues closely, analyzing their confidence, their eloquence. It was intimidating. But amidst everything, she couldn't escape the nagging sense that she had more to offer, a spark hidden beneath the weight of self-doubt. On Thursday, during a particularly intense meeting about improving client outreach, the conversation took a turn. Sarah, fueled by a mix of anxiety and resolve, raised her hand. It was the first time she had dared to speak up since starting. What if we included testimonials from single parents who benefited from our services? She proposed, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. The room fell silent. Eyes turned toward her, surprise etched on their faces. Nathan's expression shifted from professional curiosity to intrigue. That's a great idea, Sarah. It's real and relatable. Could you expand on that? He leaned forward, prompting her to unfold her thought further. Sarah felt a mix of exhilaration and fear but pressed on. The words began to flow. Her experience as a single mother was her strength, not her weakness. Minutes later, a small buzz filled the room, encouraging nods and murmurs of agreement. The ideas she laid out reflected not only her understanding of the market but also her life. The notion of connecting emotionally with a demographic she belonged to struck a chord. When the meeting wrapped up, Nathan sought her out, his eyes gleaming. You did well. You need to trust yourself more. That night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, the dim light casting long shadows on the papers strewn around. Her children were asleep, but her mind was wide awake, filled with those vivid images of the day. If she could bridge the gap between her past and this new world, then perhaps she had the power to redefine her narrative. It wasn't just about adapting, it was about embracing her true self in this arena that felt alien. But doubt seeped back in, whispering dark thoughts. What if today was a fluke? What if she couldn't replicate that success? Drenched in uncertainty, Sarah's resolve wavered. The balance between her growing confidence and her deep-seated fears teetered perilously. As she locked eyes with the bills piled on the counter, fresh worry surged. Could she maintain her footing in a world filled with expectations? This internal conflict raged like a storm. Yet beneath the tumult, something powerful stirred, a primal urge to fight for her children's future. The moment had arrived to make a pivotal choice, to step further into the light or retreat into familiar shadows. In the dim glow of her kitchen, she took a deep breath, her fingers clutching the edge of the table, poised on the brink of transformation. What would her next move be? The time had come to face her fears head-on. Unresolved questions loomed larger than ever. Would she lean into her newfound confidence, or retreat? As doubts churned within her, the stakes of her next decision had never felt higher. The following morning, Sarah woke up with a sense of urgency that startled her. The weight of her situation pressed down on her chest, a restless mix of fear and determination. As she dressed, each piece of clothing felt like an armor against her insecurities, a preparation for the battlefield that awaited at Nathan's company. Today, she promised herself, would be different. Today, she decided, she would not shy away. As she entered the office, a familiar feeling of intimidation washed over her, but it didn't consume her this time. She set her jaw, repeating Nathan's words to herself like a mantra. You have what it takes. Just be yourself. Deep within, she felt the stirrings of something bolder, a burgeoning belief that perhaps she could belong here. She settled at her desk, diving eagerly into her work, the queries lingering from yesterday's victory still fresh in her mind. The fear of being merely a fleeting thought in a dynamic, bustling environment felt less suffocating now. There was a newfound energy in her. Excitement danced at the edge of her thoughts, demanding to be acknowledged. Mid-morning, as she reviewed data from client outreach, an idea burst into her awareness like a light. It was simple yet compelling, a strategy that could bridge her life's narrative with her professional pursuits. Without letting hesitation take root, she opened a new document and started drafting a proposal for a campaign targeting single parents. This was more than just a strategy, it was her story. Time slipped away as she refined her ideas, drawing from both her experiences and the insights gleaned over the past week. She envisioned a pitch that would articulate not only a market strategy but also a connection grounded in truth and empathy. It was liberating, realizing that her perspective was not just valid but essential. Before she could second-guess herself, she stepped into Nathan's office. The room felt charged with possibilities as she approached him. "Nathan, can I present my idea for the single-parent outreach campaign?" she asked, her voice steady this time. She was surprised at her own confidence. Nathan smiled, an encouraging beacon in the professional storm. "Absolutely. Let's hear what you've got." As she shared her proposal, the words flowed with clarity she hadn't known was possible. She discussed the emotional impact, the authenticity of testimonials, and how it could build rapport with the audience in a way traditional methods could not. Each point seemed to resonate, and when she finished, Nathan was silent, nodding thoughtfully. "This is impressive, Sarah," he finally said, his admiration evident. "You've tapped into something real here. We need to make this happen." Her heart soared at the unexpected validation, yet, beneath that, a twinge of fear crept back. Was she really ready for this? As they discussed the logistics of the campaign, her mind raced with the effort it would take to bring this project to life. However, the lingering doubts were beginning to shift toward something more constructive, a willingness to embrace the struggle ahead. She returned to her desk throughout the day, buoyed by a sense of purpose. Colleagues began to notice her renewed energy and determination. In a moment of camaraderie, a few approached, eager to discuss her idea further. Each conversation chipped away at her self-doubt, slowly reconstructing her confidence. Yet, a nagging thought persisted in the back of her mind. What if she didn't meet the expectations that this newfound role demanded? What if her efforts fell flat, leading to disappointment? As the day drew to a close, her excitement wrestled with dread. She craved the growth that accompanied bold choices but feared what failure might mean for her future. In an attempt to steady her tumultuous thoughts, Sarah left the office feeling empowered but uncertain, her mind swirling with the implications of her pitch. The real work was just beginning. Could she lead this idea to fruition? Standing at the threshold of her old life and this new chapter, she realized there was no turning back. The stakes had risen, and so had her ambitions. But even as her heart pounded with encouragement, the questions remained potent. Would she rise to the occasion, or would this be another obstacle in a series of personal battles? A storm of possibilities loomed ahead, each offering both risk and reward. As Sarah gripped the steering wheel on her way home, a quiet resolve settled in. The moment had come to face the daunting unknown of her own capacity. Could she transform this flicker of hope into a blazing light? That evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, a half-eaten dinner ignored before her. The vibrant energy from the office was replaced by a heavy silence, thick with self-reflection. As the moonlight poured through the window, illuminating her scattered notes and proposals, a disarray of emotions pressed down on her. She felt the beautiful rush of creativity ebb away, now clouded by disbelief in her own abilities. What exactly had she set in motion? The excitement of her pitch resonated in her mind, but alongside it loomed the intimidating reality of execution. Could she lead a campaign and make it resonate with others? Each time she imagined the launch, she could feel panic rising within her. Yes, it was her story, but would it hold the weight she envisioned? Moments passed in contemplation until realization hit her like a jolt. This fear was not new, it was a familiar foe, born from years of playing it safe, of allowing self-doubt to steer her decisions. But this time would be different. She would not let the shadows of reluctance dictate her narrative. What she had on her side was authenticity and the willingness to embrace the discomfort. With renewed vigor, she gathered her thoughts into a coherent plan. Research had always been her strong suit. Learning how other companies approached similar campaigns, studying metrics of emotional engagement, and identifying potential pitfalls became her mission. Sarah set aside her evening, not for trivial distractions but for honing the strategy that had sparked her inner fire earlier that day. Hours passed as she designed the framework for the campaign. It began forming in her mind like a tapestry of ideas, real stories, real emotions. She envisioned testimonials from parents that were not just anecdotal, but riveting narratives which could touch hearts. She scrolled through community forums, gathering insight into the challenges single parents faced, and it further fueled her drive. Anxiety gripped her with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. What if her vision fell short? What if the backlash came from her colleagues or the very audience she aimed to connect with? Pulling herself back from these spirals, she addressed those thoughts head-on. Each challenge represented an opportunity to evolve. The next morning, having pieced together a detailed presentation, Sarah felt different. It was as though the urgency that clung to her was replaced by a sense of control. This was her project, and she would fight for it, face every doubt as they came. Growth takes courage, she whispered to herself before heading back to the office. Stepping into the building, she felt the familiar intimidation creep back, but this time it merely set the stage for her resolve. Instead of retreating within herself, she welcomed the challenge. Every breath she took instilled strength, and as she made her way to Nathan's office, the weight of self-doubt began to lift. "Can we go over the details again? I've added some fresh insights," she said when she entered Nathan's office, her voice unshaken. Nathan raised an eyebrow, curiosity sparking in his expression. The exchange of ideas ignited something not just in her but in him too. "Absolutely, let's dive deeper," he responded, inviting her to present her ideas once more. As she spoke about her refined plan, the words poured out with newfound clarity. She highlighted potential engagement avenues, outlined demographic analytics, and spoke with passion about her audience's narratives. Nathan's nods of approval validated her instincts, each affirmation nudging her further away from fear and closer to her destiny. However, just as excitement surged within her, a sudden thought struck: what if a disagreement arose? What if the response wasn't as affirmative as she hoped? The looming presence of skepticism threatened to surface again. The thought was rapidly interrupted by Nathan's enthusiastic feedback. "This is powerful, Sarah. You've really captured the essence of the outreach we need." Her heart raced. This was the moment she had longed for: recognition and validation. But it also presented a new question. As she left the office, exhilaration battled with the tide of anticipation. How would she handle the inevitable challenges ahead? What if the realities of executing her vision proved far more daunting than the planning phase? The horizon of possibility opened up, but so did the apprehensions. Standing at the edge of her aspirations, Sarah realized that the storm ahead wasn't just about her campaign. It was also about her ability to confront her innermost fears. Would she rise, armed with the strength of her truth, or would those fears pull her back into the shadows of doubt? The answer awaited her in the unfolding journey ahead. The next morning dawned with a fresh resolve steaming from Sarah's core. As she entered her office, her heart raced with both anticipation and underlying trepidation. The exhilaration from Nathan's approval still tingled in her veins, but it was quickly overshadowed by the arduous responsibilities ahead. She paused for a moment at her desk, focusing on her breathing to steady herself. Today would not just be a typical workday, it would be the day she stopped worrying about the what-ifs and focused instead on taking tangible steps toward realization. First up on her agenda was gathering her team to discuss the campaign's direction. As she prepared to speak, she surveyed the room, noting familiar faces tinged with various emotions: curiosity, skepticism, and a hint of excitement. They were her allies, yet insecurities gnawed at her as she considered their potential reservations. Would they embrace her vision? Or would lingering doubt stifle the momentum she had worked so hard to generate? Clearing her throat, Sarah felt the weight of her purpose pressing firmly on her shoulders. Thank you all for joining me. I'm excited to share the campaign plan I've been developing. It centers around real stories, our audience's stories. This isn't just about marketing, it's about creating connections. She infused her voice with determined clarity and paced slightly, emboldening her stance. As she spoke, hands began to rise in the crowd. Questions emerged, some supportive, others tinged with skepticism. What's our unique angle? One colleague pressed. How will we differentiate ourselves from similar campaigns? Another challenged. Each query was a test, yet Sarah welcomed them. She reframed their inquiries into opportunities to elaborate and engage. Sarah responded with specifics, explaining her research into emotional engagement metrics and the power of authentic narratives from parents struggling like the individuals they aimed to assist. We can show the community that we understand their plight, that we're here not just to sell a product but to foster genuine conversation, she said, her passion flaring. Yet, with each interaction came a stark reminder of her vulnerability. The room buzzed with the energy of differing opinions, and her confidence started to waver. What if they don't share my vision? Fear inched its way back into her consciousness. Just then, Einar, one of the most seasoned members of her team, chimed in, I see where you're going, Sarah. But there's a risk in being too emotionally driven. We need to ensure our data backs up these stories. His straightforwardness pierced her excitement, anchoring her momentarily in doubt. Still, beneath that initial sting of criticism lay a seed of resilience. Instead of recoiling, she chose to respond directly. Absolutely, Einar. Data will guide us, but human connection is paramount. Let us weave those analytics into our narratives to strengthen our message. The challenge shifted her perspective, sharpening her focus on bridging both worlds' metrics and empathy. The dialogue shifted to brainstorming sessions, and the team devolved into their subgroups, which filled the room with animated discussions. Amidst the excitement, Sarah realized her heartbeat quickened with a mix of anxiety and adrenaline. The thought of leading this charge ignited a fire she hadn't fully recognized until this moment. Despite her initial reservations, she embraced the energy swirling around her. Here was a chance to not just present a campaign but to cultivate a collective vision, something that brought forth the strength of her team. As the day waned, Sarah felt the gratifying weight of responsibility shift. They were becoming a unit, united by purpose, and she found herself accepting that the vision would evolve, shaped by diverse insights and collective ambition. Yet, in that fragile space of growing confidence, Sarah felt nagging doubts threaten to resurface. How would she manage the inevitable pushback that might come when personal stakes clashed with professional opinions? The echoes of what if clung to her, and as she left the meeting room, a storm brewed within, heralding the challenges still lurking just ahead. With a firm grip on her notes, she pondered the contest between personal belief and professional decorum. She had faced rejection before, but this time it could bear a different weight, something more personal. What would become of her dream if it fumbled under scrutiny? The thought gripped her mind, compelling her to confront the unthinkable. As she made her way home, tired yet exhilarated, her heart raced with uncertainty. Would her resolve withstand the temple of challenges that lay ahead? And what confrontations would the coming days summon forth? The following morning brought a haze of unease that wrapped around Sarah like a shroud. The enormity of what lay ahead pulsed ominously in her thoughts. A critical meeting with the executive board loomed, set to examine the campaign pitch she had nurtured. Sarah clutched her cup of coffee a little too tightly, the ceramic warm against her palms, grounding her in the present despite the swirling doubts. Steeling herself, she reflected on the ideas shared by her team and the newfound dynamism ignited within them. Yet the responses from Einar and others echoed with a foreboding reality. It was not that she lacked confidence, rather, the stakes felt acutely personal. This idea was an extension of her own beliefs, woven from her commitment to understanding real challenges faced by families. If they rejected it, what would that say about her judgment? Determined not to let anxiety govern her morning, she set out to refine her presentation. Focused and resolute, she functionally navigated her research notes, compiling data that validated her emotional narratives. Each graph and statistic became an armor against potential scrutiny, a bulwark for the story she was fighting to tell. As the clock ticked down, a quiet space emerged within her, illuminating the singular truth she needed to communicate. Authentic stories could invoke response beyond the metrics. Arriving at the boardroom, Sarah was met with a tension thicker than the air itself. Chairs creaked as she set up her visual aids, her palms clammy. She had rehearsed the pitch countless times, refining her phrases, anticipating questions like arrows shot in the dark. But reality felt different when confronted by the steely gazes of seasoned executives. With a deep breath, she stood tall. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity today. I have been driven by a vision of impactful storytelling that centers on the struggles and triumphs of our audience." As she spoke, her hands swept across the screen to highlight voices behind the narratives. These are not just statistics, they are lived experiences, human experiences. The numbers are significant, but we must connect emotionally to inspire action. A few board members leaned forward, their expressions betraying intrigue. Yet, one figure, Harold, coldly crossed his arms, his skepticism palpable. "Sarah, how can we monetize emotional engagement? We need to assure predictable ROI before stepping into these waters." A knot tightened in her stomach. His words felt like a trap, designed to undermine her passion. It was a challenge, a direct affront to her vision. Monetary success is essential, but if we don't authentically connect with our market's essence, we risk being mere noise in an ever-crowded landscape. She sensed the moment teetering on the brink, the air thick with tension. Some gazes softened slightly, while others hardened. In this vulnerable space, Sarah understood that her dream hinged on more than just data or interpretations. It demanded a belief in the human experience. Then, as if driven by instinct, she shared a story. It was raw and personal, a tale of a mother struggling to provide for her children, whose dignity crumbled as her card was declined at the store. This moment, laden with shame and desperation, became a catharsis that illuminated her narrative. "Imagine if our campaign could embody that moment, turning shame into support," she proposed, allowing her emotion to resonate across the table. A hushed silence followed, her words lingering in the air, igniting contemplation. The board shifted uncomfortably, but she sensed the potential flicker of recognition, of connection she aimed to create. Yet, just as the air lightened, a flicker of doubt returned, probing sinister possibilities. What if they saw her passion as naivete? What if the fiery connection she fought for fell flat against corporate priorities? There was an unsettling realization: her aspirations now paired with a fear of crushing rejection. With so much riding on this pitch, Sarah felt the weight of it all. Would her authenticity survive the pragmatic lens of those who deemed success solely within financial metrics? As she concluded, the board remained silent, heavy with decision. Their expressions, once skeptical, were now a tapestry of contemplation. The time to face her fears, to confront the clash between passion and profit, had arrived. Would her vision survive scrutiny? What would they ultimately decide when pushed to choose between metrics and authentic connection? A minute stretched into an eternity as the board collectively absorbed Sarah's emotional plea. Beads of sweat traced down her spine and she wrestled with the overwhelming fear of failure. The silence felt almost accusatory, every passing second heightening her anxiety. Then, with the crisp sound of wood meeting armrest, the atmosphere shifted. One board member finally broke the quiet. "I see where you're coming from, Sarah." Linda, the head of marketing, began, her brow furrowed in contemplation. "Connecting emotionally is vital in our industry, but we need practical frameworks around that connection. What does this look like in quantifiable terms?" Her question struck Sarah like a blow, disrupting the fragile hope she was nurturing. "What do you want? Metrics, prototypes?" she thought, grappling with the pressures shaping her presentation. Frustration surged momentarily, her internal voice rebelling against the need to dilute her vision into cold data. But conceding was not an option. They needed to be reminded why storytelling mattered. Taking a deep breath, she launched into a more structured response. By taking the emotional leaps through our campaigns, we can create a loyal customer base. Viewers will see themselves reflected, which translates into increased engagement and customer retention. Emotional resonance translates to long-term relationships, which can vastly improve ROI. She saturated her explanation with recent case studies from competitors who had successfully driven campaigns rooted in authenticity. Though their results had been impressive, she struggled to shake off the nagging sense of having to diminish her idea to fit a corporate mold. Then it hit her. In preparing for her presentation, she had researched not just what had worked for others, but had filled her mind with stories of her intended audience. It was that connection, an audience member relating to a story, that would transform transactions into relationships. It's about building a service model that puts people first. As she spoke, she noticed the slight nods of approval from a few board members, an ignition of hope igniting within her. But Harold remained stoic, arms still crossed, a disapproving fortress standing firm against her vision. A flicker of fear arose. What if he undermined her again? She prepared for another question, envisioning the battle that might escalate again. Yet as she locked eyes with him, something changed. She shifted from a defensive stance to one of power. Rather than see him as an adversary, she decided to embrace the challenge. What if, she ventured, we proposed a test campaign focused on an emotional angle? If the emotional engagement translates into increased brand loyalty even just initially, then we have the data to drive additional funding for larger campaigns. Would that meet your need for assurance, Harold? He raised an eyebrow, leaning back slightly, as if considering her gambit. It was a glimpse of doubt, a crack in his armor. But uncertainty gripped Sarah. Did she just propose a half measure, a way to placate Harold without fully embracing her vision? This felt like a deviation rather than a solution. However, the edges of her self-doubt softened. She was the one pitching her dreams, and the stakes demanded she stood firm. Perhaps I've underestimated how this could unfold, she offered genuinely, redirecting her focus. What I'm proposing isn't just viable, it's rooted in people's truths. There's a major difference between an abstract campaign and one that reflects the lives we aim to touch. The atmosphere thickened, the tension became palpable as her words settled like dust. Could she push further and test the boundaries of her values without endangering her vision? Just as hope flickered in her heart, Harold spoke again, his voice steady but tinged with skepticism. You've presented an emotional case, but emotion often clouds judgment. Are you prepared to defend your approach in practical terms? Will you compel us to consider a major pivot, or will you retreat behind stories that offer comfort rather than clarity? The inertia of his challenge intensified the weight on her shoulders. At this precipice, Sarah realized this wasn't just about her campaign pitch anymore. It was about her own evolution as a leader. Would she yield, or could she firmly ground her ambitions into tangible reality? Her heart raced, the moment demanded clarity and courage. It was time to confront her inner resistance and rise to the occasion fully. This was no longer just a pitch, it was her awakening. Could she transform self-doubt into a compelling argument? How far was she truly willing to go to rewrite the narrative? As Sarah stood in the boardroom, a whirlwind of thoughts enveloped her. The stakes felt higher now. It wasn't just about presenting a campaign, but about sculpting her identity as a formidable leader. She could feel a shift occurring within, a realization that she didn't have to suppress her vision to accommodate others' apprehensions. She could cultivate her ideas and defend them with conviction. Emotion can be a driver of clarity if approached strategically, Sarah responded, each word increasingly confident. It's not just a diversion, it's a means to connect deeply, fostering an understanding that data alone can't bridge. She could feel the heat of passion coursing through her veins. The tension on Harold's face was palpable, but it fueled her determination. Taking the risk of emotional engagement, she painted a vivid picture of a single mother, someone who represented many in their target audience. Imagine her, struggling to make ends meet, working hard just to provide for her children. Now, picture a campaign that speaks to her journey. It pulls at her heart, reminding her that she's not alone, and in return, her loyalty to the brand grows. She paused, allowing her thoughts to cascade like a flowing river, her self-assurance rising with every breath. This isn't manipulation, it's compassion in business. When we show we genuinely care, we foster trust that translates to brand loyalty. Linda nodded, leaning forward with intrigue, but Harold remained on guard, his eyes narrowing. What was it going to take to convince him? Frustration bubbled inside Sarah again, the familiar sense of doubt creeping back. She could feel herself wading deeper into the water, conscious of the fragility of her position. Would she sink or swim? How do we measure this compassion? He barked, returning to his defensive posture. The challenge hung over her like a cloud, dark yet illuminating parts of her resolve. Her mind raced. Measurement was the crux of the corporate world, yet she knew that data could be interpreted in countless ways. What if we set up a multi-tier evaluation? Sarah proposed, adrenaline pushing her with an unexpected clarity. We combine qualitative feedback from focus groups with quantitative results drawn from initial purchases post-campaign. That way, we can quantify emotional engagement without losing the essence of the storytelling. Harold's eyebrow quirked as he considered her proposition, the flicker of skepticism in his gaze softening just slightly. It was as if she had cracked open a door, one that led to a possibility she hadn't envisioned before, collaboration rather than confrontation. Could he become an ally instead of an adversary? Fine, say we move forward, how will you ensure the integrity of the emotional narratives? He pressed, though the weight of his challenge felt lighter now, more like an invitation to delve deeper. This was her moment, a threshold she needed to cross. I'm willing to immerse myself further into our audience's realities. Shadowing them, understanding their struggles, documenting not only their difficulties but their victories. I'll ensure that each narrative is authentic and resonates with our core values. With her pulse quickening, she realized she had just volunteered for more than she initially anticipated. But this was growth, pushing her boundaries to reach new heights, both professionally and personally. If she fully committed to this path, it would require vulnerability, yet the prospect ignited an ability within her that had long laid dormant. With her heart pounding, she awaited the board's verdict. Would they take a leap of faith with her, or retreat into safe, emotionless data? As the board members exchanged glances, Sarah felt a sudden surge of anticipation. A new direction was possible. Just then, her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket, an unexpected interruption. Fumbling, she pulled it out and caught a glimpse of a message that changed the focus of her thoughts entirely. Mom, can you get us some food? We're starving. The reminder of her personal life and the delicate balance she maintained hit her fiercely. The challenges didn't stop at the boardroom, and they never would. Could she continue to merge her professional vision with the demands of her family? With the stakes rising, so did her sense of responsibility. As she refocused her attention back on the board, she realized perhaps the greatest challenge lay not in the boardroom battle but within her dual roles as a leader and a mother. Let's put compassion into action, she thought, swallowing hard. At that moment, she felt the need to strategize not just for her career, but for a life that aligned with her values. Would her vision be accepted, or was the path ahead one of resistance and rejection? The answer loomed in the shadows. The boardroom quieted, each member's eyes fixed on Sarah as though she had just cast a spell. The uncertainty about her direction mingled with an electrifying possibility that hung palpably in the tension-wrought air. She had spoken fervently, her passion illuminating her argument. Yet, despite the moment's weight, doubt crept back in like an unwanted shadow. How do you intend to balance this immersion with your ongoing responsibilities? Harold's question cut through her thoughts, a reminder of the split she felt between her professional aspirations and personal obligations. That question should have felt accusatory, but instead, it triggered an internal reckoning. Could she truly commit to this campaign with such intensity while still being present at home? I'll manage my time effectively, she asserted, though the firmness in her voice masked a swirl of internal conflict. Every moment spent understanding our audience adds value to my role, making the case for both my family and our company. But even as the words left her lips, she felt the weight of her promise. The silence in the room was suffocating, forcing her to confront her own resolve. She thought about the long evenings she would spend researching consumer narratives, the impending upheaval of her routine with the kids, and the potential disapproval from her family or colleagues. Commitment means being all in, Sarah, whispered a little voice in her head, reminding her of those countless nights spent cradling her children in one arm while jotting campaign ideas with the other. The drive to excel wasn't just a career ambition, it was a necessity to offer them a better life. Who said I couldn't be both? She challenged herself as much as Harold. A small spark ignited a realization that her multifaceted life didn't have to be a liability, it could become her strength. If I can connect deeply with people, both inside and outside of work, perhaps that's exactly where my true power lies. Just then, Linda chimed in, turning her gaze toward Harold. Let us give her the benefit of the doubt. The evidence shows that campaigns rooted in truth resonate better and enhance brand loyalty. We can monitor her progress closely. Sarah seized this chance. I can provide weekly updates, incorporate focus group reactions, and adjust our approach as needed. Transparency will be key. Yet, as the board members began discussing logistics, another buzz from her phone pulled her focus once again. Can you at least order something for us? Please. Her heart sank just a little. The plight of her children echoed in her mind, a stark contrast to the corporate strategies swirling around her. Her professional life crackled with energy, motivation, and hope, while the chaos at home loomed just as large, demanding her attention relentlessly. Just how was she supposed to sculpt a narrative of compassion at work while feeling like a failure at home? The meeting concluded with a tentative agreement to support her efforts. Harold begrudgingly nodded, acknowledging the potential in her strategy, albeit with a thinly veiled skepticism. As she walked out of the boardroom, the prickle of victory mingled with a looming doubt. Could she keep this balance? Would the effort to make both worlds coexist stretch her too thin? Each step away from that room became a step toward personal reckoning. She needed to confront the mounting pressure of both her aspirations and her responsibilities. As she reached her car, the reality amplified. Her phone lit up with another message, Mom, we really need to eat something. Now was the time to strategize not just for a corporate campaign but a life that defined her, the woman, the mother, the leader she aspired to be. The doubts didn't disappear, but they transformed, morphing into motivation. This dual life could forge resilience within her, she only had to embrace it. Spinning her keys in her hand, she took a deep breath, determination brewing in her chest. Next, she would have to confront the ultimate test, managing her time with the same precision she aimed to apply to her campaigns. What sacrifices would she have to make in the name of this cause? Would the paths of motherhood and leadership finally collide? As she drove toward home, an urgent question pulsed in the silence. Was she ready to prioritize her own vision over others' expectations, even when it felt like everything might unravel? The crossroads were ahead, and the choice loomed like an impending storm. The following weeks were marked by intense growth and struggle, as Sarah executed her campaign while driving toward establishing balance at home. Each day became a delicate dance, threading between deadlines and family responsibilities, igniting a newfound resolve within her. She poured her heart into crafting content for the outreach campaign, stories filled with the resilience and strength of fellow single parents. The narratives resonated deeply, fueling engagement metrics that soared beyond initial expectations. In the mornings, before the sun rose, Sarah would sit at her kitchen table, illuminating her ideas with coffee as her children still slept. Those early moments, filled with both anticipation and anxiety, became sacred. They were her time to reflect and strategize her approach for the day. The stakes felt higher than ever, yet with clarity, she embraced the challenges. This was not merely about crafting a message, it was about being the voice for those in similar situations, a chance to offer support and understanding. As the campaign unfolded, Sarah demonstrated unwavering commitment, balancing her professional ambitions with her role as a mother. The emotion and authenticity she infused into the content drew attention. The CEO of her company began to recognize Sarah's contributions. He highlighted her work in company meetings, validating her efforts and reinforcing the notion that her experiences were an incredible asset within the corporate landscape. "Your work is turning heads, Sarah. We're making more than just metrics, we're making connections," Nathan said one afternoon after a presentation on campaign results. His acknowledgement was a breakthrough. Sarah felt pride swelling within her. She had not only taken ownership of her journey but was now seen as a vital force within the company. However, the most significant transformation lay not solely within the office walls. On a day when her kids returned from school, the air filled with laughter as they recounted their adventures. Inspired by her endeavor, they felt just as empowered by Sarah's example. "Mom, are you the one helping those parents?" Ella beamed, bursting with admiration. Sarah had become a role model, not just through words, but through visible action, a true testament to overcoming obstacles. Later, one evening, Sarah sat with Max and Ella while they colored pictures of their family. As the colors swirled on the canvas, Max interrupted her thoughts with a simple, "Mom, you're a superhero." The truth in his innocent proclamation struck a chord within her. The weight she had been carrying began to lift. She had transformed into someone who pushed through fear, who found her worth, and who could articulate that each struggle carried the potential for strength. As the culmination of her campaign approached, Sarah prepared to present the success story to the board. Finally stepping into that boardroom again, she felt the confidence she had built reflected in her posture. She shared the campaign's impact alongside data-driven results, metrics that surpassed expectations and testimonials that revealed the emotional dividends fostered by their brand authenticity. This time, the board listened intently. "Sarah, your narrative and data align seamlessly. You've proven that empathy and business can thrive together," Linda remarked as the meeting concluded. The door was now wide open. Sarah had achieved not only personal validation but found a solid position within the corporate fabric of the organization. As she walked away, the rush of exhilaration swept over her. She had done more than launch a successful campaign. She had rewritten her narrative into one of strength and competence, defying the doubts that once consumed her. Expertly blending her roles, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment, leaving behind the remnants of a struggling single mother and stepping into the shoes of a recognized force within her professional realm. Sarah stood firm, proud of her achievements, ready to take on any coming challenges. She had proven she belonged in this world, empowered by her journey and emboldened by her children's belief in her ability. The future was limitless. Today, she was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. Now, as Sarah reflects on her remarkable journey, she recognizes the vital need to share this transformative tale far and wide. You need to subscribe now to ensure you catch more inspiring stories that change lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support the movement of individual transformations. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need motivation to conquer their struggles. Join the journey and become a part of the story. Your voice matters.